My name is Sarah Gilbert. I am currently a postdoc at the Communications Department at Cornell University and the research director of the Citizens and Technology Lab. I have my PhD is actually earned in Library and Information Studies at the University of British Columbia in Canada. And before joining Cornell, I was also a postdoc on a project called Pervade at the University of Maryland. After finishing my undergrad, I was actually a bartender for 7 years. But the late nights and it's just kind of a rough lifestyle to have. I was just not particularly happy, but didn't really know what I wanted to do. And figured, well, I like books, so I'm going to go to library school. And it was there that I actually got a position as a research assistant for a professor there, and really kind of fell in love with the research process. I was not super into the topic that I did my master's thesis on. It was more sort of information search and retrieval, and I was really passionate about social media and why people contribute various things despite all these kinds of privacy risks and stuff like that. So I went to do my PhD. I decided to focus more sort of on social media. I was a pretty avid Reddit user, and so was very curious about, again, what people get and what people learn from sort of participating in these kind of informal spaces. So I had used a case study approach, and one of the groups that I interviewed or were the subject of my research were participants in a community called Ask Historians on Reddit. And that was where I learned about moderation and the importance of moderation and all of the sort of work and the labor that people do to keep our online spaces, safe and productive and help people achieve their goals and things like that. So for example, if you want to learn, it's really important to have very good moderation because that can help sort of build trust in the information that you see there. Yeah, and so it was kind of from there, through there, and also kind of learning about more sort of participatory methods, and particularly the work I did at my first postdoc, which was really investigating research ethics, particularly in these big online spaces, the importance of collaboration in research. And so that's what brought me to CalLab as the community-based approach to research. So I think it's going to be different for a lot of different people. For me, that's something where people feel like they're getting what they want out of it. Different communities are going to provide people sort of with opportunities to meet different kinds of objectives, and you're going to go to different kinds of spaces. So it's going to look different. There's a general sort of, do no harm kind of thing that's sort of coming out of these spaces. So you can feel as safe and as welcome in an online space that's kind of contributing a lot of harm and putting out a lot of hate in the world. And I would not kind of, even though that's meeting an individual's goals, there's this sort of collective safety or collective element to community health that I think is important too. So, very broadly, it's, making it doing what I can do to help ensure that these spaces are kind of, that they are safe, that they are healthy, that people are able to get a lot out of them. We hear, I think, a lot in sort of the news and coming from the government about all of the negative things that happen when we participate in online spaces, exposure to mis and disinformation and horrible algorithms that push terrible things on us and make us feel bad about ourselves. And it's not that those things aren't happening, but that there's also a lot of really good things that we get, a lot of connections that we can make, things that are not necessarily available to a lot of people in offline situations. So making sure that the people who are playing leadership roles in these spaces can support those good things and sort of fight against those bad things those are my research goals. And the nice thing about Cat Lab is that we work so closely with these leaders of communities to learn exactly what sort of the challenges that they're facing are, and figuring out how through our research we can help them test these interventions for change and for positive outcomes in their own spaces. The Citizens and Technology Lab works directly with communities to engage in citizen-based and citizen-driven behavioral science research. So the kinds of things that we do are, we will sort of host these sort of seminars or sessions with different people to talk about the kind of the challenges that they're facing and help them generate ideas for what might help them address those. And then we go out and we test to see whether or not their ideas actually work. So there's like a real sort of on the ground kind of practical component to a lot of it that I think a lot of research is kind of lacking, in that we're actually kind of going out and doing these experiments and seeing what the actual effect is. So there's a causal element to what we are able to do and the approach that we're able to have. And it's all done with the cooperation, the collaboration, the consent of communities, so that you know that the work that you're doing is going to be helpful and supportive to the people on the ground. It is very challenging to sell this sort of community engaged work as legit. Citizen science has, a long history, like hundreds of years of people engaging in citizen science, but it can be a bit of a tough sell to people to sort of recognize that people without fancy sort of affiliations or email addresses or institutions have sort of this, rich body of knowledge to kind of tap into. And so, involving this, involving the people, it can be a tough sell, and there's not a lot of people doing it. But I think it's so much more impactful than other forms of research that don't involve the communities, that aren't driven by actual, real kind of on the ground problems. I would like to think that they could right away. If it's something that you're interested in, and you have kinds of questions, or you have goals and desires, or people that you want to help, getting involved in research that kind of gets you there. There's going to be a lot of support for it. Everybody here, or I would at least like to assume that people here are really interested in helping and supporting people meet sort of research goals and helping them sort of answer questions that they have in a methodologically sort of rigorous way, and that kind of support. So I would say, at least kind of starting to come to folks that are sort of, more senior, that have more, even if it's just you're a freshman and you're interested in this, and talking to some seniors, who have research experience, to kind of figure out what it is that you can do, or what you're, growing your capacities and capabilities as well. Getting involved and expressing interest as soon as possible. Well, taking, methods courses are going to be very, I think, first would be talking to sort of a mentor to figure out what it is that you need to do based on what your goals are. Because I do think it's going to shift for everybody, depending on the kinds of questions that you have, or what your what skills you want to grow. Talking to an advisor, for example, like an undergraduate advisor, a graduate advisor, to see what it is that you're interested in, to help you kind of connect with, the folks that have expertise in those areas, the coursework that you would need to do in order to answer the questions. You're going to need statistics, right? You're going to need to know how to do that properly. You can't just kind of be tough to wing it on your own. So making sure that you are actually taking the right courses that are going to help you answer the questions that you have are very important. And then it can also, like, I think in terms of like kind of moving from there to a career, like there's so many different kinds of careers that you can have where this kind of research is going to be invaluable. In a lot of the work that I do, like working with like online communities, going into tech companies, like, and being able to like have, for example, being able to build tools that help people or design interventions and to run the math and do the statistics or to talk to people, to survey them. Like, these are all things that a lot of these, like, and all skills that a lot of these companies, really look towards, and having that kind of practical experience in doing this is just a massive asset, I think. Oh, we've got, there's so much. Yeah. Like, we have a number of different projects on the go at Cat Lab right now. So one of the projects that we're working on is with moderators of a political subreddit on Reddit, and they have this like really elaborate system behind the scenes for providing people with warnings when they violate the rules. And it requires a lot of labor to sort of maintain it on the back end and keep everything all organized. And they are not sure if it is effective at all. So we are in the process of analyzing some data to kind of get a sense of, where things stand right now, like, so that we know going into it, how many people are violating rules, how do they participate after they receive one of these warnings? Do they come back? And is it successful, or do they come back and do they just get banned again? Getting a sense of like what happens so that we can take that data back and take those results back to this community and share it with them. And then based on that, we'll work on the sort of like intervention for change. So that might be, tweaking the language that they use in these warning messages, or tweaking the amount of time that they give to people. There's all kinds of different things that we could kind of vary out. And so I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be really neat, especially doing some of that testing. It's like with the election, the US election coming up in the next year, I think it will be really helpful to them and this community to kind of know, because they are going to get really, really busy. So being able to help them support a really large and important kind of discussion space for US politics in an election year, I think is going to be really important and really, really rewarding.